This week, we're talking about folk hero and possibly the 18th century's most notorious thief and escaper, Jack Sheppard. In his time, he would escape captivity 4 times in the same year and almost escape the noose. The fact that he was a cockney, a rebel, completely non-violent and very witty made him very popular with the particularly downtrodden urban lower classes of London. This is his story. He was born 4th of March 1702 in Spitalfields, reportedly to a poor family, but he doesn't seem to have had that deprived a childhood. According to the Newgate calendar, he was put into a school in Bishopsgate Street for 2 years and then apprenticed to a carpenter, and by all accounts he was a pretty good carpenter and rather well behaved. But then, after 5 years of apprenticeship, he discovered Drury Lane and Covent Garden, with their theatres and their boarding houses and their abandoned women. And in this wretched hive of scum and villainy, he enjoyed the company of plenty of those women, and one in particular was known as Elizabeth Lyon, or, as she was more commonly referred to, Edgeworth Bess. Now, Bess was not a low-maintenance girl, and in order to keep her in the manner not that she had become accustomed to, but that Jack boasted he could get her accustomed to, he ended up turning to a life of crime. Now, he started out by small-scale thefts from the houses he was doing carpentry for. He'd steal rings, silk handkerchiefs, silver cutlery items, and so on. But eventually he was going to get caught. Sure enough, his first arrest came in April 1724 when he was entrapped by the corrupt and self-styled thief-taker general Jonathan Wild. So began the first of many short periods of imprisonment, this one in St Giles Roundhouse. Now, Roundhouse is a small single-occupant cell, much like this one in Hilperton here. It wasn't going to hold Sheppard for long. During the night, Sheppard broke the chair, and using the pieces he prized away the roof planks in order to create a hole wide enough to slip through. The noise of his escape did attract a crowd, but not before he was already out, and he used the cover of this crowd to slip away. Mingling his way into the crowd, he pointed towards the roof and the rear of the roundhouse and shouted, "Look, he's getting away." And when all the crowd looked to see where Jack Sheppard may be, of course he slipped out in the other direction. Now, he enjoyed his freedom for less than a month. He was arrested again in May of 1724, picking a pocket near Leicester Square, and this time he was sent to St Anne's Roundhouse in Soho. Now, while he was there, he was visited by Edgeworth Bess, but she was recognised as an accomplice, and they were both arrested and remanded to New Prison, Clerkenwell. There, they shared a cell in the so-called Newgate Ward. Now, within a matter of days, Sheppard had worked his carpentry magic once more and had filed through the manacles of the pair and removed a bar from the window. Then, knotting together the bedsheets, he lowered Bess down from the window and then followed himself. They then climbed over the 22-foot high prison gate to freedom, which is not an insignificant achievement considering that Sheppard was only 5'4". When he was arrested again in August, the authorities were not going to make the same mistake again. This time he had been convicted of theft well into the realms of capital crime, in excess of £55. He was sentenced to death and he was bound to the condemned cells at Newgate Prison. He was there for 2 weeks before he escaped. He escaped 4 days before he was due to go to the gallows. Once again, he'd loosened the bars on his cell, and when he was visited by Edgeworth Bess and another woman called Poll Maggot, his small frame served him well, and he could squeeze out of the hatch that the bars had been blocking. He remained hidden from view by the two ladies while he donned women's clothing that they had brought in with them, and then they were away. The guards and staff seeing just a group of women leaving the condemned cells, which was not uncommon. The fact that there were 3 of them leaving when only 2 of them arrived completely passed them by. Once again, he was not out for long though, and being a capital fugitive led to a manhunt. Posse tracked him down while he was hiding out on Finchley Common, and this time he was sent to a special, condemned strong room in Newgate known as the Castle. A room so secure you didn't even need to guard it. It's just tempting fate, isn't it? Sheppard picked the locks on his handcuffs and removed the chains. He couldn't get out of the leg irons immediately, but that wasn't going to stop him. He filed an iron bar out of the chimney and used that to form a hole in the ceiling to an upper floor. Once on that upper floor, he prized several doors away from their hinges to get to the prison chapel, climbed out of the chapel window onto the roof. Now, when he looked over the edge of the roof, he found that the drop was just too much for him to stomach. So at this point, he reversed his route and went all the way back to his cell to get a blanket. Back out and back to the roof and lowered himself down onto the neighbouring roof of a neighbouring house, which he broke into, went down the stairs and was away to his freedom. That's how secure your strong room was, Newgate. Think about that. But typically, it was freedom that would last him 2 weeks. He kept getting arrested because he kept going back to the same pubs and getting blind drunk and then being discovered. And having broken into a pawnbroker's shop on Drury Lane, he was once again arrested, blind drunk, and wearing all the fine clothing he'd stolen from the pawnbrokers. He was placed back in Newgate, this time under constant observation. And just for good measure, his restraints had £300 of ironwork attached to them as well. Now, while resident in Newgate, he was still quite the celebrity, and the jailers charged high society visitors 4 shillings a time to visit him. He was quite the money spinner. He even had his portrait done by James Thornhill, the portrait painted to the king. But on the 1st of November 1724, he was sent to Tyburn to be hanged, but not without 1 or 2 tricks up his sleeve. One of these tricks was quite literally up his sleeve. He had secreted a penknife which he was going to use to cut the ropes. This was, however, discovered by the prison warder before he left. His journey on the back of the cart took him from Newgate along Holborn and Oxford Street to Tyburn, stopping at the City of Oxford Tavern for a last pint. Along the way, he was cheered by crowds of up to 200,000 people. Roughly 1/3 of London came out to see him. But remember, we did say 2 tricks up his sleeve. His last was to take advantage of his small frame once again. Before the days of long drop, it takes the condemned up to 15 minutes to die, and the lighter the man, the longer it takes to die. Or as Sheppard saw it, the longer he could stay alive. The plan was, after he was cut down, after 15 minutes, friends would claim the body, take him to a surgeon, and he would be revived. However, it wasn't to be. Such a celebrity was he that, fearing that he was going to be taken to anatomists for dissection, the crowds prevented anybody actually getting close to the body. If he wasn't dead already, and we'll never truly know if he was, this certainly prevented any hope of reviving him. And when his friends did get to the body, he was quite dead, and all they could do now was bury him, which they did in the churchyard of St. Martin in the Fields. Jack Sheppard would live on in popular culture in many forms. John Gay's Beggar's Opera is heavily based on Jack Sheppard's life, and 120 years after his death, he would be the feature of a novel entitled Jack Sheppard. This was so popular that Victorian authorities refused to license any play with the words Jack Sheppard in the title, lest it inspire people to commit crime. That ban would stay there for 40 years as well. Now, if you want further information, then there is a biography, a narrative of all the robberies, escapes, etc. of John Sheppard, written by Daniel Defoe of Robinson Crusoe fame, and you can access it in the public domain. We'll put a link to it in the description. Read it and enjoy it. It's a great criminal caper of the 18th century. Thanks very much for watching, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.